in the rational tools for System I and for System Z, and our conversation today is going to be about the Rational Developer for I product, which is our development tool for doing RPG and COBOL development on IBM I. A little bit about myself. I've been in IT way too long, 35 years plus. I actually worked for Rational Software. I joined them in 1999, and then IBM acquired Rational Software in 2003. And as I mentioned, I'm a specialist in the Z and I Rational products for development. I also have, you heard Murad Courageo's voice. Murad is also a technical specialist focused on the same tools that I focus on. And Hussein Narudin is an employee of Royal Cyber. He's a specialist in these tools as well. Hussein will be speaking to us a little bit later about some case studies that his company has done, Royal Cyber being an IBM business partner, for customers who have adopted Rational Developer for I. And both Hussein and Murad will be looking at any questions you pose in the chat window and answering those while I'm presenting, so that I don't have to be distracted by that. So if you do have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat window, and either Murad or Hussein will be glad to answer them. All right, so let's get started. Here's our agenda. I think those of you that registered for the web conference saw something similar to this, but I want to give you a little bit of background on the history of Rational Developer for I, the status of the legacy tools, and then briefly the features. I want to talk about the various editions of Rational Developer for I that are available to you today, and I know that causes some confusion. Hopefully most of the time today we will spend on the demonstration and the case studies, and I hope to have time at the end for any remaining questions. So in terms of the history of development of IBM tools for IBM I, we started with the ADTS tool set back in the 1980s. These are rough time frames, by the way. And in 2003, we released our first Eclipse-based development tool for IBM I, which was the WebSphere Development Studio Client, or WDSC as it was known. And that product remained in use and in support until the Rational brand was acquired in 2003, and in 2008 we issued our first Rational Developer for System I products, version 7.5, and I know many customers have bought the bundle called RDi for SOA Construction. And then in about the 2010 timeframe, we made a change, and WDSC support ended, and IBM decided to break out the features of WDSC and put it into separate products in the Rational brand, and also no longer include things like the compilers and WDSC with the operating system. And that happened in about the 2008-2010 timeframe. We are now running version 9 of Rational Developer for System I. We went through a period in 2011 and 2012 where we chose to name the Rational products for both System I and System P the Power family, but I think that was causing too much confusion, and we have now gone back to calling it Rational Developer for System I. A little bit about the ADTS toolset. It has been stabilized, and what I mean by that is that we're not adding new features to the product. That also means that you will not be able to call tech support and get their help if you have a problem with it or a question about it. And that was about as of V6 R1. And the other implication of the fact that it's been stabilized is that you won't be able to take advantage of any new features in the language itself. That, for example, were introduced in V7 R1, and there are some other features coming out this month in the RPG language. All of our efforts are being focused on Rational Developer for I, and that being a modern tool set, and you're going to see that in just a minute. You'll have copy paste and content assist, context sensitive searches, all the kinds of things that come with modern development tools are being put into Rational Developer for I, and the integrations with the other Rational tools like Data Studio for doing DB2 development and administration, and Team Concert for doing configuration and change management. Those integrations will only exist with Rational Developer for I. In terms of features, I'm going to cover some of these in a minute in the demo, but as I mentioned earlier, Rational Developer for I is a modern development environment. It's based on Eclipse. Some of you may not be familiar with Eclipse, but Eclipse is an open source framework that enables you to build products on top of that framework. And the benefit of that is that it allows you to have products that all have a common look and feel and a common behavior. It also gives you the ability to see a lot of information at one time for you to be able to pick the information that you want to see and so forth. The Eclipse framework is very much analogous. What I always say to customers is that it's very much analogous to the Microsoft Office suite in that all of the Office products have a common look and feel. They have common menu items across the top. They have copy paste and so forth. They just act and behave the same. And the same is true with Eclipse-based products. So those are one of the key features of Rational Developer for I. It also has a very powerful editor that we'll get to see in a minute. It's got an integrated debugger that we'll look at, application diagramming capabilities, and so forth. Now, unfortunately, in the space of this session, I won't be able to show you all the features, so please be patient with me. I'll show you as many as I can, but if you'd like a follow-up to see additional details on some of the features that I don't get to, just let us know. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the additions of Rational Developer for I that are available today. This is version 9 information, and some of you have probably interacted with IBM about these new additions and what do they mean. So there's really 3 different editions, and another word we might use instead of addition would be bundling. But you can simply buy Rational Developer for I by itself, and that gives you the ability to do RPG and COBOL development, a very powerful tool for doing that. You can buy something called the Java edition, and that gives you Rational Developer for I for your RPG and COBOL development. It gives you tools to do Java development, and it also gives you the Java tooling necessary to do web services development for your RPG programs. And then finally, there's another edition called the EGL edition. Those of you that don't know EGL, it's a language that IBM developed and then turned over to the open source community that was intended to help RPG and COBOL programmers be able to do things like easily create modern user interfaces, create web services easily, and so forth. That language is supported by a product called Rational Business Developer, which is a development environment similar to Rational Developer for System I. And the EGL edition comes with RDi and Rational Business Developer. So that gives you the ability to do RPG and COBOL development, web services development, because that Java tooling is also available in Rational Business Developer. And it gives you the ability to do EGL development. So those are the additions of Rational Developer for I that are available today. And there are some trade-off options, and I encourage you, if you're currently using ADTS or WDSC, again, both of which are no longer supported by IBM, to reach out to your IBM sales rep and talk about those options. All right, so let's switch gears and look at RDi. And I'm using Rational Developer for System I in a VMware image. I'm running actually version 9.0.01 in a Windows 7 64-bit image, and I'll be connecting to an internal IBM server. So let me resume this VMware image, which I was hoping to do before noon, but with our audio troubles, didn't get to that, so bear with me for just a minute. All right, so here we have Rational Developer for System I. And what you'll notice is that every Rational product, because it's based on Eclipse, has a similar look and feel and a common behavior. And that's, again, due to Eclipse. And Eclipse has the concept of perspectives. A perspective is a collection of views, and views are individual frames in Rational Developer for System I. Those individual frames are all shared in a perspective and all have a common purpose. Now, right now we're looking at the Remote Systems Explorer perspective, which is typically used to make connections to your servers and to edit, compile source code. And again, each one of these pieces is called a view, and you can move these around and resize them and so forth. That's one of the powers of Eclipse. Again, I'm using an IBM iServer, which is called iSeriesD.demos.ibm.com. I'm going to notice that I've already connected. You probably cannot see that little green arrow, but I've made a connection. It just required my user ID and password. There's nothing that you need to install on the IBM iServer that you shouldn't already have installed to be able to use Rational Developer for System I from your workstation to connect to your IBM iServer. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that we've got a number of things under my connection. The objects entry is similar to what you might see in PDM. It gives you the ability to work with libraries, which is very similar to the work-lib PDM command, to work with objects, which is very similar to the work object PDM command, and to work with members, very similar to work member PDM and so forth. I've got a library list, which lists the libraries that I'm currently using. I also have visibility to the other user libraries on the server. I don't have write access to those, but I have visibility to them. And then I created a filter, which is just a way of subsetting the information you see in a particular list for a later part of the demonstration. Notice also that I have a command section. There are predefined commands here, or I can create my own command sets and execute those commands, which are then run on the server, and then the output from those commands is returned to me in the command flow. And you can notice that at one point earlier today, I changed my current library to Brad Adams, which is the one I'll be using for the demo. I also have a jobs section, and I can see active jobs. For those jobs that I have permissions, mostly my jobs, I can end the jobs and do various actions on them. And then finally, I have a section where I can explore the integrated file system of System I. So this is the kind of information you get with Remote Systems Explorer. If I open my library, then you'll see all of the files and then the members of those files. And notice that depending on the type of object, whether it's a member or a file, and the type of file, I'll have a different right mouse context-sensitive menu to perform actions from. And we'll be using this particular file and these two members throughout this demonstration. The payroll and payroll G programs are essentially the same, except that payroll has syntax errors that I've put in there intentionally to demonstrate some of the features of RDi. So let's open the payroll member. Oops, I've got to reconnect here. So let me go reconnect. I thought it was connected. Alrighty. So notice my green arrow there, so that was probably due to the suspension of the VMware image. So now let me open payroll. Notice down in the lower right corner, it loaded the member from my IBM iServer and presented it in the editor that we call the Lpecks Editor. And something to note, when you open a member in the Lpecks Editor while you're connected, it locks that member on the host so that no one else can edit it while you're working on it. When you save the member and close the editor, then it releases that lock. Now, the first thing you'll notice about the Lpecks Editor is that it has color coding for keywords and other parts of the program, which makes it much, much easier to read. Also, you've got your prefix area, and if we go to something like an F-spec, notice that my ruler at the top changes to allow me to see what particular columns, the type of information that's expected in a particular column. Another really nice feature is the outline view, and the outline view has a tree structure that lists or contains all of the objects that this particular program references, including files and fields and subroutines and so forth. And so here I see all the subroutines, for example, that are referenced. I can actually click on one of the entries, which is a line number, by the way, and it will take me to that line. If I were to pick a file, the master display workstation file, and say pick the employee select record and the employee number field, then I could go to the line where it's defined and go to the line where it's modified, or simply go to the line where it's referenced. So that's a really nice feature of the outline view. For those of you that have some experience with the outline view in earlier versions, you may recall that to update the contents of the outline view, you had to essentially refresh the server. That has been fixed finally in version 9. So changes in the source member are updated in real time in the outline view. Another nice feature of the Lpecks Editor is that it supports SEU commands. So for example, I can specify a block of code that I want to delete, such as this, and simply click enter, and I have deleted those lines. Likewise, if I wanted to add some lines, I could do an insert 5, and now I have inserted 5 new lines. Another nice feature of the Lpecks Editor is that it has undo capability, just like most modern tools do. I can either use the undo here, and notice there's a redo, or I can use a shortcut, an undo shortcut, which is Control-Z. I'm going to do that 2 times now to remove the lines I inserted and to add back the lines that I deleted. So that's a really nice feature of the editor, the ability to enter SEU commands. Another nice feature is context-sensitive help. If I pick an operation code like move and I press F1 for help, then it opens the help and it takes me to the description of the move operation. And notice it has hyperlinks in it to look at other information about the move command or that's used in the move operation. Likewise, I have the full ILE language reference available to me online. So if I open the structure up, then you can see that I've got all the reference information for the RPG language at my fingertips. So the language-sensitive help is a nice feature. Sometimes you've got so much nesting of ifs and so forth, do loops, that it would be nice to have an indented view to see this information. You can do that by picking Source, Show Indentation. Now, it opened this in a view down below. I'm going to double-click, which is a feature of Eclipse. That maximizes the view. And you can see that it uses, the indentation view uses these vertical bars to indicate the nesting levels. And so this is a browse-only view, so you can't change it from here, but at least it gives you an idea of if you've got complicated nesting structures of where those nesting structures begin and end. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to double-click this again to minimize it, and then I'm going to simply click on the X to close it. So that's the indentation view. Another nice feature is the ability to search for text in a program. I could search for example, begin subroutine statements. Notice it took me to the first instance of the begin subroutine operation. Notice also that if I wanted to, I could do a replace or replace all. This is very much like what you do with modern editors. And so you can use find and replace to do that kind of operation. And when I click back into the source itself, then it removes the find and replace window. You can also filter your text. Let's pick a variable. For example, this employee application. And let's just show all the lines that contain a reference to this variable. So that's what I've just done. This compressed source view shows me all the statements where the variable imp APL is referenced. And notice there are plus signs that I can click on, and it opens all the source between the occurrence of this reference and the next occurrence. So that's a nice feature if you want to restrict what you see just to the things you need to work on. If I want to revert to seeing all of the source, I can just do Control-W. Excuse me. Another thing I can do is filter by type. For example, I can filter and just show the subroutines. And now I have the beginning and end statements for all the subroutines in this particular program, and I can do just like I did with the variable, and that is I can open a particular section of code and I see the entire content of the subroutine, and if I wanted to, then I could just work on that subroutine by itself. So that's source indentation, filtering of text. You also can do file searches and search across your server, and you can even include local files in your search. Now, because I've done this a number of times getting ready for this demo, my content's already filled in, but I'm going to search for the string ENHRS in my library in the file QDD-SSRC. So when I click the search button, it's going to run that. Oops, I got to change my library. Sorry about that. So let's see, change current library to my library. Thought that was done. All right, so let's try this search again. All right, here we go. You wanted to write that output to a library that I don't have access to. All right, so you can see that we had 4 matches. It tells me what file the matches were found in, what line number. If I simply click on the matching line number, it will take me directly to that location in the file. So this is a reference master file, and I'm going to double-click this line, and it will open that particular file and take me directly to that line, line 27. So the ability to do a multi-file search, I know several of you, if you talk to me on the phone, you may have asked me about multi-file search. That's how you do it. Another really nice feature is the ability to compare files. For example, if I wanted to compare the payroll and the payroll G programs, I simply highlight both of them, pick compare with each other, and it opens the compare editor, and I'll maximize that. And the indicators on the right here, these little bars, tell me where there are differences, and I can click on those bars, and it takes me to the line where the difference is. In this case, it's an intentional syntax error in the payroll program, or I can use the next difference, previous difference icons to look at the differences in the 2 files. So the compare editor is very powerful. You can compare 2 different files, as I've just done. You can also compare different versions of the same file, and so forth. Syntax checking, real-time syntax checking, is another feature that I wanted you to see. If, for example, I change this execute subroutine statement and put an X there, so I've obviously got an invalid syntax now. When I move my cursor off that line, notice that it fills in with an error message between that invalid line and the next one. And another nice thing now is I can push F1, and it opens the help on that particular error code. So that's a very nice feature as well. I'm going to use Control-Z to undo that now. And then finally, when we're ready, we can first verify our source to make sure we're not going to have any errors before we compile it. So I'll do that. Remember I told you that the payroll program has errors in it because we intentionally put them there to demonstrate. Notice that when the verify runs, it puts all the errors and warnings that it found in the error list view. And I can simply double click on any one of these and it takes me directly to the location where the error was, and I can correct that. So let me do that. These again are all mistakes that I intentionally put in the program so that we can demonstrate it to you. And then the other one happens to be that I put an asterisk here that messed up the nesting structure of the subroutine. So let me take that out. So let's save that, and now let's try it again. Let's try our verify again, which again is something you can do before you submit your compile to the server. And so now I've eliminated all my errors. I just have information messages, so I'm good to go. So I want to compile my program, and to do that I simply right-click, and I'm going to use the bind RPG program command. All of the CRT-like commands that you use today are available to you. So I'm going to issue this command. I'll tell you what, before I do that, let me cancel that. I want to clear out this error list so you'll see that the compile populates it with new information. So let me do that again. And again, it's populated mostly with information I've used before. Just going to change one thing. So now it's issued a compile, and it's running on our IBMI server, and the compiler returned an error list to us. And since we had fixed all the errors before we submitted the compile, then it comes back with just those information messages that we had before. So that's how you can compile a program. All right, let's change gears just a little bit and look at the debugger. So I'm going to set a service entry point for our debugging session so that when we start this program, it will stop at that service entry point. And notice it adds a view where I can see all my service entry points. The next thing I want to do is connect to my iServer using the same user ID and password that I used to connect from RDi. I need to add my library. And now let me call the program. Now, watch what happens as the program begins to execute. The debugging daemon on the system I box, which is part of the operating system, it's not something extra, communicates with Rational Developer for System I and says a debugging session has started, and it opens me in the debug perspective. Remember, a perspective is a collection of views, the views being represented by these various boxes that are all meant to serve a purpose, in this case, to debug an application. With the debugger, you can debug RPG, COBOL, CL, C, and C++. And it also opened the program that I set the service entry point in to the very first line. That's what the green highlighting means. We're at the first line of the program. And notice this program doesn't do much. It goes through a loop 100 times, which is just arbitrary. And then it finally calls the good version of the payroll program, payroll G. What I want to do is set a breakpoint so that when we get to the call, it stops. I also want to set a breakpoint on the loop, but in this case, I want to specify a condition so that when it runs 99 times, it stops. And I also want to keep an eye on this variable ampersand count. So I'm going to monitor that expression. So you can see I've got one variable that I'm monitoring. I've got 2 breakpoints. So I think we're ready to go. So let's start the program. With the debugger, by the way, you can set breakpoints You can set watch breakpoints, as I've just done. You can step over, step into programs and procedures and subroutines. You can monitor the call stacks. You can monitor memory. There's just so many things you can do with this debugger. So I'm going to start the program, and it ran down until it had executed the loop 99 times. So when I resume it again, it should execute it one more time. It's at the end of the if statement. When I resume it again, it should take us right to the payroll G program, that call segment. And notice right now, that program hasn't started yet. But when I resume the program now, let me go back to my session now and notice that it's started to execute the payroll program. We're not going to do anything beyond this with the debugger. I just wanted you to see some of the capabilities of it. So I'm going to go ahead and end this job and go back to the Remote Systems Explorer for our next part of the demonstration. All right, the next thing I'd like to show you is the application diagrammer. And to do that, I'm going to add another library to my library list. And this is one that I have used before, so it's in my list. So I've added this new library, and I'm going to go pick the content that I want to use in my diagram. There are two kinds of diagrams that you can create with the application diagrammer. The one I'm going to show you is called an application diagram, and it shows the calling relationships between the program and its various subroutines, procedures, external programs, and so forth. It's very much like the traditional hierarchy chart that we all know. The other one is called a program structure diagram, and that diagrams the relationship between bound IBM I objects. And just in the interest of time, because it's somewhat similar to the application diagram, I'm just going to show you one of those. So let me pick a couple of programs that we'll put on this diagram. So it's creating the diagram now. So here's our diagram, and I've got two programs. That's what I selected. Looks like this program has 5 nodes. Those are programs, procedures, subroutines that it calls or has calling relationships with. The order entry program has 21 nodes. And it also calls 3 external programs and references a copybook, ordmain. Now, if I expand the plus sign inside of order entry, then I can see all of the nodes of the order entry program and see the relationships between them. Again, this is very much like a hierarchy chart. Notice I've got in the outline view, I've got this blue rectangle which allows me to slide up and down on the diagram to see different parts in focus. And also, I can see a tree view of all this content rather than a graphical view. So for example, here is order entry and the 21 nodes, programs, procedures, etc. that it calls. And if I click on a particular, in this case a subroutine of order entry, notice that the connecting lines change colors. The green lines indicate that request customer calls those programs, clear error, in program, etc. The red line indicates that order entry calls request customer. And I can actually hover over the connections, and it will give me something like a tooltip to tell me what's going on. I can also double-click the source, and because I'm using this library, I don't have write access to it, so it's just telling me I can't change it. But notice it took me to the location where the subroutine is actually called. And likewise, if I can hover over one of the connection points, and let's see if I can double-click that. So it's already open. And then you can see, again, where subroutines are called or declared and so forth. So this is the application diagram. And again, you can annotate the diagram, make notes on it and so forth, save it, make graphical images that you can use in your discussions with other teammates and so forth. It's one of two diagram types available to you, the other one being the program structure diagram. So we'll leave the application diagram for now. One of the other things I wanted to show you, but not really, unfortunately, have time to talk much about, is the screen and report designer. And I've got a display file here. And when I open this display file, it's going to open it in a new perspective, the DDS design perspective. And from this perspective, you can use drag and drop technology. You can see the different kinds of controls you have on the palette here to create DDS. And it supports subfiles as well. So here you see your various records, your DDS records. You can look at properties of those individual records. And here you can see in a tree view all of the components of your DDS. So you can do this for screens and reports. I've got a report file that I have defined, and this is very similar to the screen that we looked at, but this is just a report. Same kind of thing with a palette and controls. So that is the screen and report designer. And then the very last thing I want to show you before I let Hussein take over is offline projects. Offline projects allow you to work disconnected from your IBM I server. You might be on an airplane or somewhere where you just don't have connectivity, and you can create an offline project and do a number of things, and then when you reconnect, you can do your compiles and so forth. So I'm going to pick these two particular files with their members, and I'm going to make them available offline. And now notice it's creating an offline project that has connection name underscore library name. So I'm going to click continue. So it's downloading these members. Now, one difference between an offline project and an online project is that we do not lock the members in an offline project. So there is the potential when you reconnect and do your compiles, if someone else had been working on the same program as you, that there might be conflicts that you would have to resolve. But you can see that here are the members of these two files, and we can open them. The editor is still active. I can make a syntax error here, and we get the help. We get the error message. We get the help, and so forth. You can do the source verify. If you do the compile, then it's going to, so there's my verify. You can do the compile, but it will reconnect to the server at that point. So that's all the time I have to show you some of the features of Rational Developer for I. If you'd like to see some other features, we really could take an hour just on things like the screen designers and so forth. Just let us know and we'll be happy to do that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Hussein to let him talk to you a little bit about some case studies that Royal Cyber has done using Rational Developer for I.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, Hussein, I think you should have control now.
And
if you don't, Hussein, I'll just flip through the slides and you can talk to them, okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, very good. So go ahead. Do you see slide 10 now?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Hussein.
Sure. Just a brief introduction. Hello, everyone. Just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Hussein Nuruddin, and I'm from Royal Cyber. Royal Cyber actually is a IBM Premier Business Partner, which is IBM authorized trainer for web display brand and Microsoft Gold Satisfied partner. We have number of clients throughout the entire United States, Europe, Middle East, Asia, serving lots of web-based development to complex software applications, e-business, e-commerce solution, web application, and offshore outsourcing. As Brad has mentioned all the features and live demo for the RDP Hope you guys find that quite interesting. Just let's talk about some live references in terms of case studies, which will tell you how RDP helps our customer to improve their legacy applications and their productivity on IBM I. We have lots of customers who bought RDPs. Some references are like Authoring Computer Systems, Unicredit, AA Purple Transportations, and many more. So let's talk about our number one customer, Authoring Computer. Just a little bit overview about it. Authoring Computer Systems is a leader in information technology solution. The company has its worldwide market in system conversion and the newest contract center and technologies. Actually, why they need, what's the challenges and the problem they are facing. The problem they are facing, they are used to work on the complex environment such as platforms like IBM AIX, IBM I, and IBM ZOS, and Linux. Also, they had to tackle multiple languages like RPG, C, C++, COBOL, etc. So the developers found quite difficulties to manage all these languages with some different tools and with different editors. So even debugging tasks is quite mismanagement and all the things. So we suggest the solution. The solution which we suggest, Caution take part in the IBM Rational Developer for Power System tools for IBM I and AIX. They tested and evaluated IBM Rational Developer Power System. The idea was to come up with company IDs, of course, considering all the variables that I had just mentioned. Caution was pleased with the features of the solution exposed during the evaluation, and they decided to adopt the solution, continue developing on the power systems and the power languages. They also get some benefits in terms once they acquire the solution. Their benefits are like their productivity will be improved more than 20% in just a week because of GUI interface speed, which helps to faster editing and code testing, and also syntax checking and graphical interface debugging part gives more flexibility to the developer, and our code is developed in a meaningful time period with less error prone, and the functionality is much smoother as caution was required. We have also done the similar study for Unicredit. For Unicredit, Unicredit is a major international financial institution having a strong footing in 19 European countries. They face quite big challenges as they are growing day by day. So they are looking for the modernized development platforms, because as all of knows that the current 5.5 emulator is now outdated. So they are looking for the modernized tool. They wanted to achieve the development and testing efficiency for their under development and softwares. Finally, they wanted to make traditional development attractive for current age programmers, simply because it's hard to expect today developers to learn legacy technology, to find the RPG programmers and all the nowadays. They foresees a lot of benefits or business values out of the activities, like same development environment for legacy and current application, making it transparent for the developers. As discussed earlier, today's developers are not generally comfortable with old technologies, so they get the same ID for development for both traditional and current web application. Company estimated 20% increase in development and almost 15% increase in testing productivity after their activities performed with the rational business developer of our system. Just like the Cochrane and Unicredit also took a part in IBM Rational Developer for Power Systems, tools for IBM I. They evaluated and they decided to deploy the solution to continue development on Power System in all programming languages. Now let's see about our third participant. It's A. Cooper Transportation. The challenges the A. Cooper Transportation had were they wanted to enhance efficiency of their dozens green screen developers. They wanted new green screen development tool to integrate solution for integrated IBM I platforms. Their main business values are the same, as they are facing lots of difficulties and their productivity is quite not meaningful according to their standards. So we prefer the solution to use rational developer and rational team concert for Power System, because RDP also supports integration with rational team concert. With little training, and the organization achieve the desired result in a quicker time frame. Like I said, overall companies we discussed got these benefits out of the proposed solution. They got some major benefits are like it's helped to improve productivity cause of integrated search, edit, compile features, rich source editing features, visualize, analysis and design tools are there, visualize application diagrams to understand the program and systems in well manner, IFS and local file system supports which enhance the searching capability. It's also improved their developer skills cause of GUI tools which attracts and retain new developers' attention, as it's hard to understand the legacy application codes. It's also helped the improved skills for existing developers as well.
Thank you, Hussein.
Thank you, Brad.
All right. We have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to see if there are any questions. Hopefully our Murad and Hussein have been tracking the questions as they have been posted. Looks like most of the questions, unfortunately, were due to our technical issues. Let's see, one question about supporting C. Rational Developer for I do not believe supports the C language. We have another product now which is for C and C++. I'll have to take an action item for that. Robert, I'll get back to you on that if you don't mind, please. Let's see. Another person asked about their connection dropping several times a day. I can't think of any preference, and Hussein or Murad, if you have any ideas, please don't hesitate to speak up. But immediately, I don't think of anything that would necessarily we could do with preferences to change that, Kirk. So if you'll let me know, just send me an email, btadams, B as in boy, T as in Tom, Adams at us.ibm.com, and we can take a look at that together and see what's going on.
Yeah.
I have not had that issue. Yes, Murad?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for the issue with the connection dropping, it would be worthwhile to understand which version Kirk is using. And after doing a quick search, I found that there may be issues with the VPN interfering with the RDi connection or something like that. So that may be something worth exploring.
Okay. Thank you, Murad. Daniel asked about getting a copy of the seminar. I'll be happy to send that to you. If you want one, just send me an email. Again, btadams@us.ibm.com. Let's see, what else do we have? How old can RPG code be? Hussein or Murad, do you know the answer to that question? I don't think it supports RPG2, by the way, Daniel. It supports RPG4, and I think it supports RPG3. You can debug CL, but I don't think you can support RPG2. And absolutely, you can debug batch programs. Somebody asked, two people have asked, what's the learning curve? If you have some experience, go ahead, Hussein. Yes?
Yeah, well, the learning curve, it's quite small because the interface is quite familiar with the traditional green screen, and the graphical interface helps a lot to learn easily new things because of lots of help features on the references as you mentioned in your demo.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay,
the learning phase, yeah.
Learning curve is relatively short. Also, we have some lab exercises that we've made available in a sandbox environment on IBM.com, which is a Citrix environment that you can complete. The exercises are in PDF form, so you can download them and complete them at your leisure. And there are 10 of them for RDi, and they pretty much cover the range of things that you can do with RDi, including the screen designer, report designer, the debugger, the application diagrammer, the Lpecks Editor. It covers just about everything I think that we've covered. So that's a good way to learn RDi, I think. And really, part of the learning curve is getting used to Eclipse and working in a Windows environment rather than the 5250 environment. The email is btadams@us.ibm.com. btadams@us.ibm.com. Armand asked about source control and how it works with individual members. Certainly, Rational Developer I is integrated with Team Concert so that when you can check in and out using Team Concert. If there are other integrations with things like Turnover or MKS, that's up to the vendor to create those integrations, so I don't have information about those. But I think that Turnover has an integration with Rational Developer for I at the least. I'm not sure about MKS. And yes, you can, Daniel, you can debug bash programs. Let's see, what else? Teresa asked about if you open a program in the editor while you're connected, then it's locked. And Murad or Hussein, do you remember, is there some kind of icon that is added to the file to show that it's locked? I don't recall if there is. But typically, Teresa, that's managed by having a source control system behind you, like Team Concert or Turnover or something like that.
Well, for this, I guess, Jerry, they need to use the source control, as you said earlier, because when we check in the program, it's actually download a copy on our local file system. So a program will be free for any user, because it's also support offline capabilities. So that's why a copy of program will be downloaded on local system. So if they want to see the locking facility, they need to move on to the Rational Team Concert or some other source control tools.
Okay, thank you, Hussein. And I see that Cabot said that they use MKS in conjunction with RDi, so that confirms there's an integration there, and I'm pretty sure Turnover has an integration as well. Let's see, what else? Todd said something about the RPG free, the /free syntax. By the way, we will be supporting freeform RPG in RDi very, very, very soon without the need to use the /free keyword. And Greg, I don't know if there's an interface to Aldon change management. You'll just have to look on their website. Sorry, I don't know. So we're almost out of time, and I don't want to not answer any questions. But if there's a question that I've missed, first of all, please accept my apology because they came they came fast and furious there at the end. Again, my apologies for what was probably lack of experience with GoToWebinar on my part. And we use GoToWebinar all the time. Somebody asks if this is typical of our webinars. The answer is no. This is the first time I've used it. So please don't let that color your opinion of both IBM webinars and GoToWebinar in particular. But if you have further questions or you'd like a follow-up with your sales rep, then again, send me an email, btadams@us.ibm.com. And if you would please include your phone number and your company name as well so that I can direct you to the right sales rep. I hope that you have found this useful, and I wish you all a very good rest of the day. Thank you for joining.